These are stories of outdoor adventure and expert advice from folks with calloused hands. I'm James Nash, and this is the Six Ranch Podcast. What is an expedition?
Wow. Firing right off from the get-go. Expedition to me is doing something that challenges you in a serious way. Maybe forces you to suffer. Along with a team that has a common goal. And I suppose it doesn't have to be with a team, but for me it often is.
Yeah.
It's, at least in my context, it's, something done in a far-flung, remote place that's usually cold and has a lot of unknowns attached to it.
The Marine Corps is described as an expeditionary force in readiness.
Okay.
And due to the nature of how Marines are dispersed around the world, we're set up to be able to land a battalion of Marines anywhere in the world in 24 hours. So whether that's to fight or to help, usually to help, we're ready to go for that. From a military standpoint, the expeditionary mindset means that you're ready for whatever quickly, and you can go and you can survive in that place. You can make it from that place to another place. I think expeditions are like an organized adventure. It's planned to the point that it can be, and then prepared for whatever chaos might follow. Within your context, what does this really mean? And why would you be the guy that I would be asking about expeditions?
Well, I guess I'm the one that, in an expedition sense, I sort of think about it as trying to eliminate all of the unknowns that you might encounter. And
because through experience, what some of those unknowns are, right?
Right. And so, my job is to help people understand, to make known the risks that might exist on any expedition, and do my best to eliminate any of the unknowns.
What type of expeditions do you organize?
So primarily expeditions in the polar regions.
Mm-hmm.
So North Pole, South Pole, Greenland, South Georgia Island, Svalbard, Iceland are some of the places that we spend a lot of time.
But you just got back from a place that is very unarctic.
Yes. Yeah. I just got back from a little over a month in the Mediterranean.
Yeah.
And so...
How was that?
It was great.
Yeah. Eat some good food?
Ate a lot of good food, a lot of good swimming, a lot of great kayaking, which is what we do over there.
Is this a shoulder season for them?
It is.
Yeah.
It's the end of their season, end of the main tourist season. The rain usually comes.
That's what I was wondering about, is when they start getting weather.
Yeah, mid-October, late October is when the rains come. So that company, that work is under a sister company of, so we've got the Polar Expeditions under Polar Explorers is the name of the company, and then the sister company is the Northwest Passage. And actually, Polar Explorers started as the Northwest Passage in 1984. And so actually the first North Pole expeditions that we ever ran were under the name the Northwest Passage.
Yeah.
So it's pretty much the same staff. We all wear those two hats, and it's a good balance for us.
My favorite genre of nonfiction is polar exploration.
Okay.
Especially if there's some kind of calamity involved.
Okay.
Which, when it comes to the nonfiction, if it's worth writing about, there's some calamity.
Sure.
Yeah, if it goes well, oftentimes not as juicy on the print. But it all started with me reading about the Endurance, about Shackleton's expedition. And from that point, I wanted to learn as much about that as possible. And then it just opened up. Well, now I need to know more. Now I need to know about everybody else. And there are some fantastic books out there. But you've actually been to these places. I want to talk about South Georgia. But before we get into that, can you just briefly kind of describe what the Shackleton expedition was and what South Georgia's relevance is to that story?
Sure. Yeah. So the expedition that we're referring to is Shackleton's Trans-Antarctic Expedition was the name of it. And it was started in 1914 in England. That was when they left port, and ultimately wrapped up in 1917. And the goal of the expedition was to be the first people to cross the Antarctic continent. And so for them, that their plan was to cross from the Weddell Sea, to get onto Antarctica from the Weddell Sea, and then exit via the Ross Sea. And it was a very ambitious, obviously no one had done it before, kind of a plan. And
did we even have a good map of Antarctica at the time? Like, did we know how big it was?
I don't know exactly.
Yeah.
I think that they had a pretty decent idea because they had set up this whole crew that was going to pick them up on the other side in the Ross Sea. And I can't remember exactly how many days they'd allocated for themselves to cross Antarctica. But they had an idea of how long it was going to take them, insofar as they could tell this other ship when they should expect to see them on the other side.
And it was a little bit of a rosy idea that they were just going to sail down there, basically pull the boat up to the beach, get out with the sled dogs, and then cross the continent.
Totally crazy.
Right?
Absolutely. It's unfathomable for most people these days.
Yeah.
To even consider what the entirety of that expedition would actually entail.
Another thing that was going on culturally was Britain was very into exploration, and the exploration that was still available was in the poles. We'd gotten to lay eyes on a lot of the rest of the world. So there were these races to get to the North Pole and to the South Pole. And Shackleton had been on some of those expeditions trying to get there and had failed, if I'm remembering correctly. And Amundsen made it to the South Pole and beat him. So he needed to do something grander. He needed to do something bigger, because just making it to the South Pole, that had already been done. So it's like, well, what hasn't been done? I'm going to cross that entire thing on foot. Right.
Yeah. And so, continuing on with the story into South Georgia's significance, the Endurance got stuck in the ice in the Weddell Sea before they even got onto the continent. And they spent a bunch of time there and then trying to figure out what to do. The boat got crushed, and they had to totally change the trajectory of their mission to surviving. And, ultimately they lived on the sea ice for a while, and then they got their rowboats going, and they rowed to Elephant Island, which is just sort of off the Antarctic Peninsula. And they set up shop there for some time, and then ultimately The final effort from Shackleton, and I believe it was 5 others, joined him on a mission to get to South Georgia Island, where they knew that there was a whaling station at Grytviken, which is on the northeast side of South Georgia, which they'd been to prior to sailing down to the Weddell Sea.
Right. It was their last port of call, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
So they knew, it was sort of their closest point of contact to the world. And unfortunately, I think due to weather mostly, they ended up landing on the wrong side of South Georgia, and they had to cross South Georgia overland on foot. And ultimately, they made it to Stromness, which is the name of the bay there where Grytviken is, and I think it only took them 36 hours or something like that, which is pretty amazing.
And to put this into a little bit more perspective, they had been out for a couple years at that point. It was more than a year that they'd been trapped in the ice before the Endurance got crushed. So a big windstorm came up, all the wind pressure pushed on the ice stove in the ship, and she sank. They have to drag these rowboats, these open-bowed boats, through all this buckled up ice, cutting holes through the ice to get there. They're out of food. They're living off penguins. They have reindeer sleeping bags that are rotten and the hair's falling off of them. And they finally make it to open water. They get to Elephant Island, and the wind cuts through there so hard that it's literally blowing the clothes off of some of the men. They set up a little bit of a shelter, and when they cross, I think that was 800 miles of the gnarliest ocean on the planet, with common 100+ foot waves, allegedly, called graybeards that crush container ships today. And they did it in a 22-foot. Is that right? James Caird.
I want to say that it's even shorter than 22 feet.
Yeah.
But
they
very small boat.
A little boat, big
Yeah.
ocean.
Yeah.
Their navigator, who's one of my heroes, during one of these really stormy nights, hadn't been able to get a sighting on a star for days, didn't know quite where they were. And then there was a little opening in the sky. He sighted a star with his sextant. He looked at his charts. He looked at the last remaining chronometer that they had and made a decision to alter their course. The confidence to do that and to say, okay, that is the star that I think I'm looking at. And I'm going to make a decision here to alter our course to hit this island. I mean, it's so mind blowing. Now, when they get there, they don't have a bunch of mountaineering gear. They don't have nice clothes. They're not in good physical condition. They're been living off penguins and steel meat. They're basically starving to death. They're not warm. And I think they had like a carpenter's adze and 50 feet of rope between them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they're at the tail end of a multi-year sufferfest.
Yeah.
With limited equipment. And just to highlight what you were just talking about, that navigational change on the way over to South Georgia. If you look at South Georgia Island on a map, you can see, one, how small it is in context of the Southern Ocean. But if they miss the island, right, if that measurement is off by just a little bit and they miss the island, they're not going to hit anything until they get to
Brazil.
No, like South Africa.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot, then they're really in for it. But yeah, they once they got to South Georgia, they had nothing. They were hammering nails through their boots to use as crampons to give them traction, on the snow and ice. And totally crazy.
My understanding is that route that they took wouldn't be crossed again until the 1950s, and that was by a professional mountaineering team.
Could be so.
And this is the route that you're about to go do.
Right. Yeah.
Tell me about it. How do you plan for an expedition like this?
Sure. So obviously, we have many of the amazing luxuries that they did not have. So we go down there equipped with all the Gore-Tex and good skis and boots and pretty much anything you want. Proper sleeping bags and down parkas, and goggles. But we retrace the route that Shakleton took across South Georgia Island, and so we get on a boat in Ushuaia, Argentina, and
lovely place to eat a steak.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
drink some Malbec, and we sail. I say that in air quotes because it's not actually a sailing vessel. We'll motor all the way across to South Georgia Island, which usually takes 4 to 5 days. And we get dropped off in King Haakon Bay, which is the bay that they landed in on South Georgia Island. And we hope that there's good snow conditions and that the snow is going all the way down to the sea. We're sort of getting into the later part of the austral spring, right? So going into their summer, and so the snow is melting from the island a bit. And we get dropped off and we follow Shackleton's route across South Georgia, and the boat picks us up on the other side.
How long will that take?
So we do it in 3 nights, 4 days, what Shackleton and his team did in 36 hours.
And is 3 nights and 4 days still a push?
Not if the weather's good.
Okay.
But on South Georgia, the weather's everything. You can imagine this very rugged, mountainous, glaciated island in the middle of the Southern Ocean, gets hammered by wind. At this time of year, we sort of expect temperatures around freezing, and so it can be this nasty rain, snow, wintry mix that, anyone who knows about that knows that's sort of the worst kind of weather. I'd much prefer it to be 40 below. It's more manageable in a lot of ways.
When Shackleton and his crew were beset in the ice, some of their most miserable days were in the summertime, because it was just slush everywhere.
Right.
So now everything's wet. They far preferred it to be cold.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. And so the route it's relatively straightforward. There's one major crux of the route, which is this steep descent off of what's called the Trident Ridge.
Is that where they glissaded down?
Right. Yep. Exactly.
That was a crazy move.
Crazy move. And of course it would have been much different when he was, when they were there. But every time that I've, walked down that slope, there's open crevasses everywhere. It's like, how did they survive that? But
one of the most interesting things about Shackleton as a leader, and I've probably bought 50 copies of that book to give away to people who are in leadership roles.
Is that South or
the Endurance?
Endurance. Okay.
Yeah. So what I think is really interesting, that the guy was largely a failure in most of his life. Failed businesses. This was a failed expedition, but the way that he recovered from that failure was marvelous because he didn't lose a single crew member. Absolutely astounding. He was a tremendous leader in an emergency, and he needed that emergency to function correctly. Anytime that life was going well, he found a way to sabotage it. And he would oscillate between being very, very patient and very decisive and bold. And in this pitch where they glissaded down, here they are, they probably won't survive another night if they have to spend another night out there. Like they just might not make it. So he makes the decision that they're all going to hold on to each other and human bobslide down this face that you say has crevasses and exposed boulders and all this gnarliness on it. and somehow they slide to the bottom in safety. And by doing so, make up enough time that they can make it into that whaling station. One of the most touching parts of that whole book is they get there, their faces are blackened from the soot that's been coming off of these stoves that they've been burning penguin fat in order to melt ice for water and cook their food. Their clothes are falling off of them. They've lost a tremendous amount of weight. They look like skeletons. And these whalers and everybody that has seen them walk into town, they look like used up ghosts. And they ask for where the captain of the whatever, the guy who was he a mayor, some type of figure who's sort of running the town, where he lived, and walked up to his door, and he opened the door and looks at them and says, who are you? And he says, I'm Shakleton. And the guy burst into tears.
Right.
Oh my God.
Right. Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible. But I think that the leadership lessons from that, of knowing when to be patient, knowing when to wait, and then saying, all right, now I'm making the decision, we're going for it. Like we've got a little lead that's opened between these ice flows. We're going to throw the boats in, we're going to go for it. Like, those were the decisions that allowed them to survive. And also the decisions to be like, no, we're going to wait it out for a while. We're going to be patient here for a while. Excellent judgment.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, as, clearly someone who knows a lot about Shackleton, you sort of just spelled it out, but I was going to ask you what some of your, and as someone who, works as a guide and a leader, what some of your big takeaways from that story are, and if you try to, implement any of that into your own leadership style when you're
definitely
with people.
Definitely. There's others too. And I'm curious how you would answer that question yourself. There was a guy in camp, I can't remember who he was, but he was aggravating. He was annoying for everybody to be around. And Shackleton was deeply concerned about morale, rightfully so. So he took the most annoying, aggravating guy who was there, and he put him in his own tent with him. Now you have to consider, this is 1914, 1915, British Empire kind of at its height. And he's the captain of an expedition. He is the first officer on the ship. That's not a normal thing to do. Like, at that time, officers were eating the very best food. They were getting double rations. Like, they were treated much better than the rest of their crew. So something that was that selfless to say, no, I'm going to take the guy that I cannot stand, that nobody can stand, and I'm going to keep him close to me so that he isn't dragging down everybody else. That is an excellent example of unselfishness and enduring the burden of leadership. So that's one that I think of, like, manage morale to the best of your ability. And if that means that you have to eat last, if you're not going to eat at all, if your life is going to be made worse because of this, that's something that you have to do as a leader. And you should look for those opportunities to do something like that so that you can improve everything for everybody else.
Right. And that was also sort of a show of humility from him, which is something that I think about a lot in a leadership context, especially in such a dire situation. You need to maintain your position as the leader, that's important, but you also can't be, in order to preserve morale, you can't be putting yourself on a pedestal to the point where, you sort of need to integrate yourself into the team in a way that makes them think of you as one of them as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And take information from everywhere that you can and from everyone that you can get it from, and then make a decision, right?
Right.
but don't make your decisions in a vacuum. I think another thing that Shackleton did really well is when he had a subject matter expert like Worsley, his navigator, say, hey, I think we need to make a course correction. He didn't fight him on it. They made a course correction. Like, make it so. Let's do it. That's another hallmark of a fantastic leader is you pick your people well, and you trust them to do their job. You inspect that they've done their job, but you don't get into the weeds with everything. Like, you delegate these tasks. You make sure that those tasks are understood, supervised, and accomplished. Yeah.
Totally,
I don't know.
Yeah. You're understanding who does what well and figuring out how to make best use of people's skill sets.
Mm-hmm.
And then trusting that, they're going to do a good job. Because people need to feel that trust,
Of all these expeditions that you've done in these regions where consequences are severe for things going wrong, have you seen some things go wrong that you've had to deal with? What kinds of adversity have you come up against?
Good question. Several different forms of adversity.
Tell me a story. I love a story.
In a really cold environment, in the Arctic and the Antarctic, the cold gives you immediate feedback. Whether that's with your equipment or your skin or your choices, right? It's the kind of environment that gives you immediate feedback. And so, yeah, I've dealt with minor frostbite a number of times. Nothing that has ever been, serious enough to be amputated or anything like that.
On yourself or on your crew?
Never on myself. In my crew. And frostbite happens so fast. It's
so fast.
It's one of those things where, I can ask people at every break that we take, every hour, how are your fingers feeling? How are your toes doing? But unless people are telling you, like when something feels different, it can happen within a matter of 10, 15 minutes. And so, we talk a lot about the good cold and the bad cold with people that we go on these trips with. And the good cold is something that you're going to experience all the time, and it's okay to feel a little bit cold. My goal on these trips is to feel comfortably cold.
Comfortably cool, baby.
Right.
That's right.
Because if I'm not cold, then I'm sweating.
Yep.
And if I'm sweating in a cold environment, then I'm about to be really cold.
Yep. If you sweat, you die.
Right. So comfortably cold, that's my motto. That's the good cold. But the bad cold is the kind of cold in your fingers, your toes, anywhere, where stopping and trying to fix it doesn't change the situation.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when it becomes a serious, like we got to stop and put a tent up and like fire stove. Like we got to, do something immediate and sort of drastic to make sure, that we're not risking a finger or toe here.
Yeah. A couple of years back, I was out coyote hunting on New Year's Eve, I believe. And it was about 24 below zero, snowmobiling. It was at night, and it was stupid. Like, coyotes weren't out, nothing was out. It was too cold. It was a dumb time to be out, but I wanted to go. It was the plan. I did it and decided, okay, enough of this, gonna head back for the lodge. Jumped on this sled and took off. And my balaclava, which is like a face mask, folks, that you wear, usually tucks up underneath the bottom edge of your goggles. It had pulled down a little bit on my left cheek. So there was just a sliver on my left cheek that was open between my goggles and my balaclava. And I felt it like as soon as I touched the throttle. And it was maybe 8 or 10 minutes to get back to the lodge. And I was like, I'm not going to stop and fix it. Because if I stop, I've got to take my gloves off and fix this. And like, whatever. I'm just going to go. I got frostbite that fast. And, you take 24 below zero and you add 30 or 40 miles an hour of wind chill onto it.
Doesn't take long.
Doesn't take very long.
Mm-hmm.
And that spot on my cheek is numb to this day.
Yeah.
And it gets cold real quick now. So that'll just be a thing forever.
Yeah. It will. Yeah. So, if frostbite, don't see it all the time, but sometimes we do.
Yeah.
And it's a hard thing to manage. It's the thing we talk about the most with people, and that we try to manage the most. We're constantly checking in with folks. And,
communication is a huge element of success in these things, right?
Oh yeah. And like looking at the person you're skiing with and being like, oh, James, like, you got a little gap in between your balaclava and your goggles. Like that's not something that you're going to know until it's too late.
Right.
So yeah, it's all about working as a team and being there for one another, helping each other out.
Pretty cool. Yeah. Can you think of a specific story where you were concerned, where you were worried and you figured it out?
Yeah, sure. There's sort of a whole expedition that had a lot of that going on. This was a North Pole ski expedition in 2017, I believe. So just to give you a little bit of context, to get to the North Pole is a crazy logistical challenge. There's no land at the North Pole. It's all floating sea ice, and you don't want to go there in the winter when the sea ice is the best and firmest and most consolidated, because you have 24 hours of darkness and it's unbearably cold. So we go to the North Pole in the springtime. You give the sun a month or so to come up so that you've got it a little bit higher in the sky.
Like March?
April.
April.
Yeah, April. But you don't want to wait too long, because then the ice starts breaking up a lot and then travel becomes really tough. So, and I'm not sure that I want to go into all of the crazy logistical history that's gone into making North Pole expeditions happen in the past. For now, I'll just focus on the story now, but we can get into that if you want.
Okay. I do.
Okay. But so we'd flown on a fixed wing aircraft, an old Soviet era Antonov 74 from Longyearbyen, which is up in the Svalbard archipelago north of Norway. And that lands on an ice runway up on the sea ice close to the North Pole. Temporary camp set up, and then you get in this old Soviet era helicopter, and you fly out to the starting point of the expedition, which for this trip, it was we were skiing the last degree of latitude. So from 89 degrees north to 90 degrees north, which is the North Pole, 60 nautical miles. Generally takes 7 to 10 days. I was guiding a trip with one friend of mine who I still work with and guide with all the time. And we had a small group. We had 3 folks from Malaysia, and they were going to be the first Malaysians to ever ski to the North Pole. And so a part of the story is that at some point during the expedition, there was some communication error, not error, but miscommunication they were communicating with like the president or prime minister of Malaysia. And he had essentially posted or said on television that they had made it to the North Pole before we had made it to the North Pole. So we've got all this like pressure, to get to the North Pole. And on day 2, we're sleeping. We have 24 hours of sunlight. We're sleeping, and we get woken up by our colleagues who have an expedition group nearby. And they say that they just had a polar bear come into their camp and they had called into the logistical company that flew us out there, and they had heard that we were nearby, and so they came out basically looking for us to let us know that there's a bear in the vicinity. So, we get up and we decide that we're going to go and ski over to their camp, and we're going to sort of just like join forces for at least the night. We didn't really make a good plan at that time, but there's this polar bear in the area, and we're going to go and hang out with them. And because what we need to do in that situation is set up a bear watch. We need to have someone out awake at all times, and it makes it easier in a big group. So we joined forces with this other team, and we'd end up deciding that we're just going to ski as this like mega group to the North Pole, and which is hard for a lot of reasons, but managing a big group of people and different speed, everyone's doing their own thing, and so everything just takes longer, right, with a lot of people. Fast forward a number of days, we every night we've got a 24-hour bear watch going, which is one of the worst jobs in the world, up on the polar sea ice. But we're getting close to the pole, and until one night when we're contacting our logistics providers, they tell us that there's a crack in the runway, and so the sea ice is cracked where they'd built their runway, and they're coming to pick us up right now. And we sort of just hang up the phone, like, bad connection.
Prank caller.
Like, we didn't hear that. And then we sort of like mobilize our crew. We're like, we gotta go, I can't remember exactly how many miles we had left, and so we start like moving and going, day and night. We were probably only a day and a half away at that point, but I've got these really great memories of we stopped. We said that we were going to let all of our clients sleep for a couple hours, and me and some of the other guides, we were just like delirious, sleep deprivation, delirium, but 24 hours of sunlight and like doing this crazy thing and trying to get people there. And so of just like sitting in the vestibule of this tent with the stove like right in my lap, like eating this freeze-dried mac and cheese. For some reason, it's a really distinct memory in my head. But the next day we get up, and there's this big open water lead, so the ice has broken up, and we're starting to feel like, like we're not going to be able to do this. Like, we've got all these pressures, we've got the Russians telling us that the runway's cracked and they're coming to pick us up. And we're still seeing bear prints around, and then we got this open water that's blocking our route to the pole. And after some MacGyvering, we, using ropes and ice screws, we like pulled a bunch of ice together to basically make a bridge across this big open water lead. And we ended up all skiing to the pole that day. And the craziness sort of continued. We got picked up on this crazy helicopter flown back. We all get on this fixed-wing plane, which landed, and they had this bulldozer out on the sea ice, and they'd built this new runway in the days that we had, bad connection with them. And we flew back to Norway that same day, and this one guy on our team, he'd brought a tuxedo, and he puts this tuxedo on the plane, and he's walking around this like, old Soviet era cargo plane with no windows, pretending to be like a stewardess, like serving drinks and stuff, and everyone's partying, and that was a fun trip.
Can you make it to the North Pole without Russia's cooperation?
That's a good question. Short answer is I would say yes. But the way that the logistics have gone in the past, ever since it was possible to go to the North Pole, has been through a company that was mostly Russian.
Mm-hmm.
And they have done it in a way very well, that was relatively affordable. And I'm sure that there are other ways to do it, but with great difficulty and with great liability, and from like an operational standpoint, a lot of risk involved. Of course, you can, there's a big icebreaker cruise boat that goes up to the North Pole these days during the summertime when the ice is broken up a lot. But to ski any duration to the pole, to do any kind of over ice expedition, it's increasingly difficult right now.
Interesting.
Yeah.
How expensive are these trips?
Oh boy. Well, off the top of my head, and so I guess I should say that the last time a North Pole expedition ran was 2017.
That's what I thought. It's been a number of years since anybody's been there.
Right. It's been a long time. And who's to say really what the reasoning behind that is? Some of it is the Russian-Ukrainian conflict. But a lot of it is in a realm of geopolitics that nobody really is privy to the answer to why it's not happening. Much more complicated than what we're told every year.
Is the Greenland crossing a better trip?
It's a very different trip. It's a longer trip.
Yeah.
It's more challenging in a lot of ways. Although I think that traveling on the sea ice to the North Pole is one of the most amazing environments in the world. It's totally surreal. You sort of feel like you're on a different planet. And it's dynamic. The ice is moving all the time. It's smashing together. It's pulling apart. You've got wildlife. You've got bears, foxes. You've got seals and all kinds of life besides yourself. So there's something really special about the Arctic Ocean. The Greenland crossing is more of a, from coast to coast, you are climbing up through glaciated terrain, and then all of a sudden you're up on the Greenland ice cap, and it's flat and it's white, and you don't see anything besides white for the next 25 days.
Wow.
And you're just you're just walking. And
what does that do to you psychologically?
To me, psychologically, or to most people?
Oh, both.
So I really enjoy that kind of a trip, and that's why I do what I do. I find it to be meditative, and I think that you need to get into that rhythm when you're doing something like that. Otherwise, I think it can be really psychologically challenging. Physically, it's a challenging thing for sure, but I think for most people, any reasonably fit person, it's more psychologically challenging.
Yeah.
The monotony, the cold, the constant need to focus on, putting one foot in front of the other.
Is navigation tricky?
It can be, but generally not. So
I'm just thinking about a flat, all white environment. It feels like it would be easy to accidentally turn left.
Sure. Yeah. So in a big open environment that has a featureless environment like that we're talking about, the way that I navigate is I have a chest-mounted compass.
Mm-hmm.
So it's this like plastic piece. It almost looks like a really narrow bow that comes off from my chest, and the compass slides into it. It sits maybe like a foot and a half off of my chest,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's held up by a string around my neck. And so I'll set a bearing, right? Usually off of a GPS. So I'll use my GPS. I'll find the waypoint that I want to navigate to, and then I'll set my compass to basically take me to that waypoint. And that way I don't need to I don't need to burn a bunch of battery in my GPS. I can just walk, and this compass is sitting out in front of me sort of at the perfect distance so that, I'm not like straining my neck to need to look at it all the time. I can look out, and so that makes it actually pretty easy. Obviously in a whiteout, you do a little bit of zigzagging. But when I'm navigating, I'll look at the compass, I'll find where I want to go, and then I try to look out on the horizon. Usually you can see a little piece of snow or ice that's a slightly different color. It's got a mini shadow on it, or that's like way off in the distance, and I try to ski it as straight as I can to that one point. And then once I get there, or if I lose it, if I look away or whatever, then I sort of repeat that process.
How many miles will you do in a day on a Greenland crossing like that when you're on the plateau?
Greenland crossing, we go for anywhere from 13 to 20. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you're scooting right along.
Yeah, we're scooting. And obviously, the first few days of the trip, you're are the slowest and the lowest mileage by far. You've got the heaviest load that you're pulling. You're pulling a 30-day self-supported load. You're going uphill. You're going through the most complicated terrain. It's sort of like this big ice labyrinth, glacier, crazy, wild meltwater channel environment. And then once and it takes your body some time to acclimate to pulling a load like that, and the repetitive motion on your muscles, and then a week goes by and your load's lighter, your body's strong, and you're used to the cold. And 2 weeks in, you're feeling real good. 3 weeks in, you're cruising, and then come week 4, you're at the end, pretty much.
How do you manage the post expedition depression?
Yeah, it's a good question.
Because that's a real thing for people who do stuff like this.
It's totally a real thing. And I often talk to people that come on trips with me. I talk about the post-expedition phase as a real part of the trip that we're going on. It doesn't end just when you get to the end of a place. For me, I don't usually experience that kind of a depression. I think maybe when I was younger, and maybe when I was first getting into these kinds of trips, I might have, had something like that, like, oh, real life sucks, whatever. But these days, the mindset that I try to carry with me is, I learn a lot on these trips, and then when I come home, that's sort of my time to metabolize it. And to try to implement some of the things that I learned about myself, or any of the ways in which I felt like I grew as a person. I try to transform that into the standards by which I live at home. And so, yeah, I think for me, it's not necessarily, I wouldn't characterize that time as a depression. I think that it can be, there is a period of reintegration, maybe, and especially with loved ones and your my partner, and it can be hard to communicate with people while you're gone, and so when you get home, you're trying to catch up, but you can't catch up a month's worth of life, in over dinner.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is interesting, and it's hard, and it's sort of a give and take of like giving space to people and asking for whatever space you need. But I think for me, it's usually a pretty smooth transition.
I get it after long trips and hunts. If it's 3 weeks, 4 weeks, something like that, my reverse culture shock is so real. Like even something like going into a grocery store can feel pretty daunting.
Yeah. So what does that look like for you?
It's so much extra stimulation. There's lights, people are talking really loud, they're slamming doors. And I'm like, what is going on? This is just noisy and chaotic, and doesn't seem to have as much meaning for me. If I've got the next thing to look forward to, then I'm good. But the other thing that I've found is I need to not like quit that expedition cold turkey necessarily. Like if I've been hunting for 4 weeks and then get done with that, a couple days later, I need to like go shoot my bow or go grab a shotgun and do a quick bird hunt or something like that, and kind of like microdose it a little bit.
Sure.
And that seems to have a really big impact. I recently saw a guy who had just done this huge canoe trip, and he'd taken a canoe from, I think basically the Great Lakes all the way down the Atlantic seaboard across Florida and then come back up.
Oh, I saw that. Yeah. To the Gulf of Mexico or something.
Yeah. He just finished a couple days ago, and I sent him a message, and I was like, hey, make sure you get back in the boat at some point in the next couple of weeks. Just kind of even this out. That'd be rough. He did 480 days of paddling every day. Hard to just go back to normal life after that. Got to find a way to even it out.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And so many people struggle with that, and that, 400 days. I can't even imagine. I mean, what kind of life craziness struggles he's trying to navigate. Yeah.
A couple of years ago, I'd been guiding elk for 3 weeks, and there was a wedding that I needed to go to in Las Vegas. I came straight out of the elk woods, went to the airport, flew to Las Vegas. I was there for 36 hours, and that culture shock, that abruptness of going from being as intentionally quiet and sort of immersed in the woods as I could be to Las freaking Vegas, where everything is loud and bright and fast. Oh man, it was brutal. And then I came straight from that back to the woods, and it was just like, okay, I'm good again.
Yeah.
And I can handle cities and stuff like that. I'm fine. It's not like I'm an agoraphobe or anything like that. But sometimes those abrupt transitions can be a little bit weird.
They are.
Yeah.
Totally. That actually reminds me a bit about when I was much younger. I spent a lot of time hiking the Appalachian Trail, and I didn't hike the whole thing, but I did a large section of it before I went off to college. And when I finally got off the trail, I had gotten really sick, and I hitchhiked off the trail, and this old lady picked me up on the side of the road in Massachusetts, and she owned an Airbnb, and she put me up for a couple of days and got me going again, got me back to health. And then I had to go to school, so I decided to go home. And I'd just been living as a dirtbag for the last 4 months. And so, instead of doing anything reasonable, I decided to, hitchhike to the train station and take a train to New York City. And I remember the feeling of when I got off this train in Grand Central Station in New York City after being out on the Appalachian Trail for 4.5 months or something. And I have this memory of these people riding down the street on elephants. And to this day, I don't know if that was a real experience or not. I think it was some kind of like Indian wedding, but I don't know. I could have been so out of it and like stupefied by the world that was just like a made up thing in my head. But yeah, your story just reminded me of that time in my life.
Yeah. There was a guy who was doing a big hunt in Tajikistan, and I think it was for argali, and he'd been dealing with some altitude stuff, and they told him, "Look, if you continue to have these problems, we're going to have to pull you." It's a very expensive, once in a lifetime hunt, and I remember him talking about coming around the trail, and he hallucinated that there was a baby in the trail, and he's like, "Listen up, baby. This is between you and me, all right?"
All right, dude, time to go.
But he ended up not telling anybody about that and finished the hunt, which may or may not have been the right choice, but it worked out.
In Tajikistan.
Yeah.
What were you hunting?
I wasn't there. This was somebody else.
Okay.
But
what do you hunt in Tajikistan?
probably argali, Marco Polo sheep.
Okay.
Yeah. Or people also hunt ibex in Tajikistan, which would be rad.
Have you ever hunted in Asia?
Just people.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
But I would like to. I would love to hunt the elk that they have in Mongolia and Kazakhstan. Very similar to our elk, if not the same. I'd love to hunt ibex there as well. I thought Kazakhstan was a really beautiful country in the short time that I was there. I would like to go back there. It has the highest average elevation of any country in the world. Nomadic people, very interesting to me. Kyrgyzstan. That was Kyrgyzstan, but I haven't been to Kazakhstan.
How do you do at altitude?
Good.
Yeah.
I do great. I'll get like a 10,000 foot headache for the first day or two, and then it seems to be good. Yeah. If I take some anti-inflammatory stuff before I sleep, that seems to make a big difference too. And to drink enough water. I'm not good at drinking water. And when it's cold, I'm even worse at it.
It's hard.
It is hard. Yeah. It's tough to do.
You got to force yourself.
And you need to do it.
You need to do it almost even more so.
Yeah. So, okay. We could talk about expeditions for a long time. And I think that we're going to have to come back and do this again. If people are like, yeah, I want to do Shackleton's journey across South Georgia Island, or I want to cross Greenland, or they want to go on an expedition with you. How do they find out more about it? Where do people go?
Sure. Yeah. Our company's called Polar Explorers, polarexplorers.com, at Polar Explorers on Instagram. You can reach out to me directly by email at taylor@polarexplorers.com. We don't run the Shackleton crossing every year because the logistics of the boat getting there are a little tricky, but we have been going at least every other year, and we're trying to make it more of an annual thing. So,
man,
please do reach out.
I'm going to look more into this myself. Like it's so alluring. There is a real shortage of grand adventures in the world. And so many of them are difficult to access because we don't have the expertise. There are too many unknowns for the average person, from gear to skills to logistics to permits. I mean, it's a huge lift. So this is something that I need to look into personally, because I would love to do something like this. I would love to do a big expedition in Greenland that at some point included a reindeer hunt.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that would be sick.
And I should also talk to you at some point about a trip that I've guided before up in northwestern Greenland, where the whole trip was, we went out with 2 local hunters and we were traveling by dog sled hunting.
Yeah.
Seal and polar bear as well.
That would be rad.
So
yeah.
Yeah.
No, we need to talk more about this. All right, dude. This has been fun. Thank you so much. I'm about to take off on an expedition of my own. And folks, if you don't want to hear about it, don't tune into the podcast for the next couple of weeks, because that's what I'm going to be talking about.
He's going to Mexico. Hell yeah.
That's right, brother. All right, dude. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me on, James. It's been a pleasure.
Dude, Polar Expeditions. It's the greatest of stuff. Yeah.
For some.
Yeah. Any Guggen can go buy their way to the top of Everest, you know? Yeah, this is the real deal.
It is, yeah.
Okay. All right. I love it.
Cool.
Bye, everybody.
See ya.
Thank you to everyone who has taken the time out of their busy lives to write a review for the show and share it with their friends. I'm extremely proud of how intelligent, engaged, and adventurous this audience is. Original music for the Six Ranch podcast is written and performed by Justin Hay. Art for the Six Ranch podcast was created by John Shakleton and digitized by Celia Harlander. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you again next week.